Crocs shoes are ugly. That's not my opinion. According to a recent survey by the research firm Civic Science, 46% of Americans think all Crocs are ugly. 23% believe that some Crocs are ugly. So more than 2/3 of Americans believe that at least some, if not all, Crocs are ugly. Despite this, the brand has seen a significant resurgence in recent years. In 2024, Crocs posted its best year ever. They sold 127 million pairs of Crocs, generating $3.3 billion of revenue. This surge in popularity can largely be attributed to the younger generations. The unexpected nature of the company's turnaround can be seen in its share price. Throughout the 2010s, Crocs was on the decline. Wall Street had almost written it off as dead. Its share price fell to as low as $6 in 2017. Against all expectations, the company's revenue and profits exploded in 2020 and 2021. At its peak in late 2021, Crocs' share price reached $180. The share price has fallen down a bit since then, but it's still doing much better than anyone would have predicted at the trough in 2017. In this video, we'll look at the origins of the Crocs shoe, and why they withered into obscurity in the late 2010s. Then we'll look at the brand's unexpected resurgence with the younger generations. We'll try to determine whether this resurgence is sustainable, or just another fad that will fade away in a few years' time. Crocs Inc. was founded in 2002, the same year they released their first shoe. The type of shoe they make is called a clog. It is a very simple shoe made with a rubbery plastic material. At first, the main selling point of Crocs was that they are waterproof. This makes them a good choice if you're on the beach, boat, or anywhere else your feet might get wet. The brand name Crocs is an abbreviation of crocodile. Crocodiles are amphibious animals that live both in the water and on land. Crocs were immediately a commercial success, selling millions of pairs within the first few years. At first, they were mostly purchased by beachgoers and people who were around water a lot, but their core customer base would soon change. In 2005, a Colorado-based couple named Sherry and Richard Schmelzer started a side hustle which would alter the course of the Crocs brand. The couple had purchased a few pairs of Crocs for their children. Sherry realized that the holes in the Crocs were perfect for putting decorative ornaments. She started making ornaments by hand using clay and rhinestones. At first, these ornaments were basic things like flowers and stars. She started selling them online under the brand name Jibbitz. Jibbitz became extremely popular, especially with kids. Choosing your own Jibbitz is a way to show off your unique personality and style. Jibbitz are very cheap. In the beginning, they only sold for about $1 each. This made them very accessible. Middle and high school students would show off and compare their Jibbitz collections to each other at school. This creates social pressure. Kids who don't have Crocs or Jibbitz feel left out, so they pester their parents to buy them a pair of Crocs. Crocs' senior management team quickly recognized the potential. In 2006, just 1 year after Sherry and Richard Schmelzer started making Jibbitz in their basement, Crocs bought them out for $10 million. There were a couple of strategic reasons for this acquisition. They made Jibbitz the official ornaments for the Crocs brand. They are sold in the same stores and in the same section where Crocs shoes are sold. This greatly reduces the market for knockoffs. Anybody can make knockoff shoe ornaments and try to sell them, but it's very difficult to compete with the official Jibbitz brand. The Jibbitz only cost about $1 a piece. Very few people would buy a knockoff just to save 50 cents. Secondly, Crocs could start doing collaborations with well-known brands like Disney to make co-branded Jibbitz. Most brands wouldn't want to work with an aftermarket company. They're much more willing to work with Jibbitz because it is the official Crocs brand. In 2006, shortly after acquiring Jibbitz, Crocs conducted an initial public offering on the New York Stock Exchange. From the very beginning, Crocs shoes were widely ridiculed as ugly. Here's an article from CNN Money on the day of the IPO. They call Crocs the maker of the world's ugliest shoe. So why do people wear Crocs despite their ugly appearance? You have to consider the audience. Especially with the introduction of Jibbitz, Crocs became very popular with middle school kids. The fashion sensibilities of preteens is different from that of adults. The other reason for their popularity is their comfort. They are easy to put on and take off. The plastic material they are made of is soft, further contributing to their comfort. In the beginning, Crocs Inc. was highly profitable. In 2006, the company generated $355 million of revenue. Their cost of goods sold was $154 million, giving them a gross profit of $201 million, or 57% of revenue. That's an extremely high profit margin, especially considering that the shoes only retailed for about $30 a pair. Crocs are extremely easy to make. The classic Crocs clogs are only made from plastic. They can thus be made by injection molding. You have a machine where molten plastic is poured into a mold of the desired shape. Once the injection molding machine is set up, it is relatively easy to operate, requiring only a few workers. The video we're watching now is not an actual Crocs factory. It's a knockoff brand that makes shoes very similar to Crocs. I couldn't find unedited footage of an actual Crocs factory, but this nonetheless shows us how injection molding works. Crocs are made in a very similar manner. By contrast, more traditional types of shoes are much more difficult to make, as they use multiple different types of material and cannot use injection molding. For example, here we can see the inner workings of a New Balance shoe factory. While there are many machines involved, these machines are far more complicated in their operation. Even to this day, some parts of their shoes need to be stitched by hand. This requires far more workers and is thus far more expensive. The majority of Crocs shoes are manufactured in China and Southeast Asia, where wages are low. At least for their classic clogs, the production cost is very low, probably $1 or $2 per pair. The majority of the cost is related to shipping, warehousing, and markups charged by the retailers. The low production costs allow Crocs to maintain high gross margins despite relatively low retail prices. The relatively low retail prices also reduce the competitive threat from off-brand knockoffs. Crocs owns a patent for the specific plastic material they use, but there are many similar types of plastic that competitors can use. If you just look on Amazon, you can find many knockoffs. For example, these clogs from a brand named Gatpot look very similar to Crocs. They retail for $20 while Crocs retail for $34, so you can save $14 by buying a knockoff. But $14 isn't a whole lot of money, so you're better off just buying the real thing. By the early 2010s, Crocs' management started to worry that their product lineup was getting stale. Their original clogs were very popular, especially with the Jibbitz, but they feared that this could be a fad. It's very risky for any company to be entirely reliant on just one product that doesn't really change year to year. So in the early 2010s, they started releasing dozens of new shoes which bore almost no resemblance to their original clogs. For example, in 2012, they launched a new line of winter boots. Unless you see the small logo on the back, you probably have no idea that they were made by the Crocs brand. These boots were not waterproof and do not fit in with the Crocs brand identity. Almost all of the non-clogs shoes that Crocs made were commercial failures, generating disappointing sales. Consumers were confused. They would walk into a Crocs store and find numerous different styles of shoes, which was not what they expected. The expansion into new types of shoes was also very costly. Their simple clogs were very cheap to produce with injection molding. Their new models were often far more complex, requiring different materials and more labor-intensive manufacturing processes. There are also significant costs associated with designing new shoe models and setting up the relevant supply chains. Most of the new shoe models were sold in such small quantities that they failed to pay back these investments. Let's now analyze Crocs' reported financial results in the early to mid-2010s. Revenue peaked in 2014 at $1.2 billion. This is 20% greater than the $1 billion they generated in 2011. Despite the strong revenue growth, gross profit remained relatively stagnant. Operating income declined from $132 million in 2011 to just $29 million in 2014. In every one of the next 3 years, revenue declined, falling back down to $1 billion by 2017. They also started to struggle with profitability. They were operating at roughly break-even, oscillating between small operating profits and losses. Now let's look at the number of shoes they sold each year. In 2011, they sold 48 million pairs of shoes. In 2015, their unit sales peaked at 58 million pairs. In 2017, they also sold 58 million pairs. In terms of the number of shoes they sold, they seem to be doing pretty well. The problem is the average selling price. In the early 2010s, they generated $22 of revenue for each pair of shoes they sold. By 2017, this had fallen to just $17. Keep in mind that the average retail price is higher than this, as Crocs sells its shoes to retailers at lower wholesale prices. So why did their average selling price decrease? Crocs massively overestimated demand for their new shoe models. They produced far too many of them and they were not able to sell them at full price. They were forced to discount their prices to clear out their bloated stockpiles of inventory. They increasingly relied on outlet malls where they sold their unwanted shoes for bargain basement prices. With the success of their original clogs, Crocs mistakenly believed that they had built a general footwear brand and people would buy anything they made. This was obviously ridiculous. Crocs making winter boots is about as absurd as if Nike were to start making high heels. As the company's profits collapsed, so too did its stock price. At the trough in 2017, Crocs' share price fell as low as $6. This gave the company a market capitalization of approximately $400 million. They were just barely above penny stock status. In 2017, the company was in desperate need for a change of direction, so they appointed a new CEO, a man named Andrew Rees. Rees recognized the company's previous folly and rationalized their unwieldy product portfolio. He got rid of most of their sneakers, boots, and other products that were expensive to make and didn't sell very well. They would go back to their roots and focus on their core competency of injection molding. They would only make their classic clogs and other variations of it, all made with plastic. But this comes with its own problems. If you stick with your tried and true cheap plastic shoes, how do you innovate? Eventually, the brand will become stale and your consumers will lose interest. So what's the solution? To keep consumers interested, Crocs decided to turn to brand partnerships, celebrity endorsements, and limited edition runs. They utilize artificial scarcity to boost consumer hype and urgency to buy. Limited edition Crocs have become something of a collector's item. Some people collect dozens or even hundreds of Crocs, most of which they will likely never wear. One of the most bizarre collaborations they did is with Kentucky Fried Chicken. In 2020, they launched a KFC branded Crocs, which includes a chicken wing shaped Jibbitz. They retailed for $60 and only a few thousand were made. They sold out within seconds of launch. Today, you can buy them on the secondary market for $169, almost triple the original price. Another bizarre partnership they did is with Balenciaga. If you have $1,300 that you don't know what to do with, you can buy the co-branded Balenciaga Crocs. Many of these limited edition Crocs people buy without the intention of ever wearing. Perhaps they want to display their collection on their wall, or perhaps they hope to resell them to a greater fool for a higher price. With their customizable Jibbitz and numerous different styles, Crocs represent a way for people to express their individuality. In the past, this was done mostly by children at the schoolhouse playground, but with the rise of social media platforms like TikTok, young adults are also using Crocs as a way to gain attention. A recent survey from the research firm Civic Science can give us some interesting insights about Crocs' customer demographics. If we look at people who own Crocs and like them, it's pretty much evenly distributed across age groups. 23% of Americans aged 18 to 24 own Crocs and like them. 18% of Americans over the age of 55 say they own them and like them. But the purchasing intent tells a very different story. 18% of Americans aged 18 to 24 said they are likely to buy Crocs within the next 3 months. Only 7% of Americans above the age of 55 say they are likely to buy Crocs within the next 3 months. So what do these numbers tell us? In the past, Crocs were purchased by all age groups, mostly due to their comfort and practicality. But the recent resurgence in Crocs' popularity has mainly been driven by the younger generation, what you might call the TikTok generation. Now let's turn back to Crocs' unit sales and average selling prices. Crocs' sales really started to pick up in 2021. In 2024, they sold 127 million pairs of Crocs. This is almost double the number they sold in 2020. The average selling price also increased significantly. At the trough in 2017, they only generated $17 for each pair of Crocs they sold. By 2024, this had increased to $26. There is indeed massive demand for Crocs, much more so than there ever was in the past. In 2024, the Crocs brand generated $3.3 billion of revenue, which is the most revenue they've ever generated by a wide margin. Now let's look at their consolidated financial results. In 2022, Crocs Inc. acquired a shoe brand called Hey Dude. This contributes approximately $900 million in annual sales. On a consolidated basis, Crocs Inc. generated $4.1 billion of revenue in 2024 and reported an operating profit of $1 billion. The resurgence of the Crocs brand has unsurprisingly catalyzed a massive increase in the company's share price. As of the time of recording this video, Crocs' share price is $88. That's more than 10 times higher than its trough value in 2017. This of course begs the question, is the company's recent success sustainable? One potential risk is that Crocs may have become overly reliant on its limited edition co-branded drops. While they probably represent a small percentage of sales, they generate significant hype on social media. The importance of social media hype should not be underestimated, especially given that the brand caters disproportionately to the TikTok generation. The Crocs story shares some uncanny similarities to Nike. In the late 2010s and early 2020s, Nike focused heavily on limited edition sneakers that were snapped up by collectors and speculators. They eventually oversaturated the market and consumers lost interest. This resulted in declining revenue and profits. Since the peak in 2021, Nike shares have lost 2/3 of their value. If you want to learn more about the Nike story, we made a video about them last year. The link is in the description below. To be clear, Crocs and Nike are very different brands, so it's far from guaranteed that Crocs will suffer a similar fate, but it is something to keep in mind. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video. What do you think about Crocs? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next one. Wall Street Millennial, signing out.